elle est en place. C'est la poudre.
Tiens, on a découpé une femme en morceaux rue de la bienséance à 2 pas du chat. Tiens, on a découpé une...
I am a feminist.
Je vous obsède avec une constance
je ne suis pas conduite
qui appelle quand même l'admiration.
D'une façon conforme à ce qu'on attend d'une jeune fille d'abord et d'une femme ensuite.
I'm sorry that I didn't become the world's first black classic pianist.
Donald Trump.
Je crois qu'une femme qui existe dans son temps, à l'intérieur de son temps, n'a pas d'époque, elle marque son époque.
Welcome to La Poudre, an intimate, in-depth conversation with inspiring women. They are artists or activists. They are creative. They're powerful. How did they become women? What books did they read? What fights did they fight? What do they scream? What do they dream? I am Lauren Bastide, and today my guest is Gloria Steinem.
If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and looks like a duck and you think it's a pig, it's a pig.
I interviewed Gloria Steinem. No, but really, here it is. I interviewed Gloria Steinem. It's wonderful. It's like honey in your ears. The theoretical power of this woman. What she says about speech, about nonviolence, about the media, about racism. She's absolutely extraordinary. She has the voice and the mesmerizing beauty of an 80-year-old activist who spent her life on the road sharing the feminist thought. And even though the sound isn't of the finest quality, and I'm terribly sorry about that, I thank from the bottom of my heart both the Mona Bismarck Center and Harper Collins, who allowed me to talk to Gloria Steinem in public that evening. Before moving on to our interview, I want to say thank you to all our French Gloria Steinems as well. There are numerous, these day-by-day activists who give their time and energy for our fight at the expense of their personal life and even health sometimes. They know who they are. Actually, many of them already came through here. But just because I fancy it, I turn my thoughts today to Peytashnek, also known as Anaïs Bourdet, for the amazing work she's done with her Tumblr since 2012, changing so many women's lives. Thank you, Anaïs. Now I leave you by Gloria Steinem's side. Have a beautiful summer. I'll come back in the fall with an even more explosive season 4 of La Poudre. Take care of yourselves and keep the powder alive. With Gloria Steinem, we talked about writing, traveling, and loving. Good evening. So, Gloria Steinem, I cannot believe I'm saying your name in front of you right now, tonight at the Mona Bismarck Center. I just wanted to start this interview by thanking you. And I'm going to cry, I think. Thank you for everything you've done for women over the last 60 years. You've earned just rights, freedom, voice, and I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if you hadn't paved the way for me and my feminist sisters. So thank you. I'm so grateful, and I think you deserve by starting with an applause.
I thank you for that. I feel the same gratitude to the people, and especially women, who made me know I was not crazy, the system is crazy. and I thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives to come and be in this space. And I hope that we each leave here with some new idea, some new outrageous act of we're going to do something that makes, and me too, I will leave here with something new. So thank you for being here.
So your book, My Life on the Road, has just been translated to French. It's a book about traveling, about meeting people, and about listening. But I think it's also a book about writing and sharing your experience with the world. So I was wondering, how important is writing to you, Gloria Steinem?
I think writing is the only thing that when I'm doing it, I don't think I should be doing something else, right? And perhaps that's the test of métier, of what is closest to our hearts. But I have to say I have learned from this kind of lecturing or being together that even the printed page, as much as I love it, is not as important as this. And especially now when we spend so much time looking at screens instead of at each other.
In this book, you share your life, even the most intimate aspects of your life, especially regarding your childhood. It's fascinating because you say it took you a while to realize that your life had been in a way designed by your childhood, that you became a traveler because your dad was a wanderer, that you lived your life at the fullest because your mom couldn't. Why do you think it took you so long to come up with this realization?
I think when we're not living the life that society tells us to live, that is, I was not getting married, having children. I kept thinking I would do that, just not right now. I would do that in the future. It takes a while to realize that this is your life. This isn't something temporary before you do what you're supposed to do. So that, realizing the degree to which I had learned what was possible from my parents took me longer. They were not conventional either.
You're right, feminism takes its roots into women's everyday life, which is another way of saying that when you're a woman, personal is political, which is a very famous feminist slogan. How important is it to tell the world about your personal journey as a woman and as a feminist? Did you have to do it?
Yes, I had to do it, and I think each one of us needs to do it. We speak our truth, perhaps thinking that we're alone, and then we hear other people saying, oh, I feel that too. It's the way we learn from each other. We haven't been sitting around campfires telling our stories for hundreds of thousands of years for nothing. It is the way we learn and the way we empathize with each other.
So what I love about this book is that there is an interesting paradox in it. You often travel alone. It's a very solitary experience and a very independent life you've led. But throughout this book, there are so many lives that cross your path. You give us glimpses of the journeys of so many other people, Indian activists, taxi drivers, air hostesses, students at universities. And I have the feeling that this book isn't about traveling places, but more about traveling humanity or people. Am I right?
Yes, because if you're traveling with even one other person, you form a unit, and other people are less likely to come to you to speak. If you are by yourself, you are more open to kind of instant communication with the people around you. It isn't that one thing is better or worse, but it is true that a solitary traveler is more likely to become part of the groups that you, or the individual people you encounter, and it's more likely to be spontaneously there.
But how do you remember all these anecdotes about, like, the taxi drivers?
Well, actually, I had to supplement my memory by going back to people and saying, do you remember the time?
So there is something you call the on-the-road state of mind. And it is not only a way of traveling, but also a way of living. Could you describe this state of mind to us?
Yeah, it is. I would say an on-the-road state of mind is open. So even if you're not on the road, when we leave our houses in the morning, if we talk to or listen to the people around us, or just see the people around us, in a way you're on the road. It's also possible to be on the road and be closed. I mean, I think, lots of people who are in a job that requires traveling are just in a kind of traveling booth, that it's their concern with selling or dealing or whatever it is. So they may not be able to be as spontaneous as a traveler would be. I mean, when you get into an elevator and there are just one other person or two other people in the elevator, you kind of know that you're both thinking the same thing about something. The music, whatever it is, but you don't say it. It's so interesting if you say it. I was standing on the curb near my house, and there was a man, an elderly Chinese man, standing next to me, who I think was delivering food, right? And I decided I would just say hello to him for no reason. And so I said hello to him. And he said to me, you can't make this up, "What do you think of Margaret Thatcher?"
There is also this sentence by feminist Robin Morgan at the beginning of the book: hatred generalizes, love singularizes. That struck me because the more I go forward into feminism fight, the more convinced I am that our fight is a fight for complexity. I think women deserve complexity. Do you agree with this?
Yes, we are complex. And I think that quote of Robin Morgan's is brilliant, right? Hate generalizes, love specifies. Because we are each a unique combination of heredity and environment that could never have happened before and will never happen again at the same time that we share our humanity. Hate does come from putting people into groups and characterizing a group and losing the individuality.
It's also for that reason that I cannot stand people talking about the woman. We're women, not the woman. I think it's terrible, this way of generalizing. Anyway, so I found out in your book that when you started your feminist activism, you were not self-confident. You were even panicked at the idea of speaking publicly. That is something I'm very familiar with, and I think many women are. What helped you overcome that fear?
No, well, when I felt I had to speak because there was no other way to get the word out. But there were not enough places that were open to publishing this, news of a different sort. And I went to see a speech teacher. And she said, well, of course, you've been two things in your life, a dancer and a writer. That means you don't want to talk. So I had to overcome it. And mainly I just learned you don't die, which I thought you did. So that was very helpful. But the reward is so huge because, as I was saying, sitting in a circle, telling our stories, it turns out you cannot empathize. Literally, you cannot empathize with each other unless you are together with all five senses. We don't produce oxytocin, which is the hormone that, if male or female, if you hold a baby, you're flooded with oxytocin. And unless we're together, you don't produce that, right? So the reward of getting past the fear of speaking was discovering our true human, ancient, timeless way of communicating, which is like us now, with all five senses. Mm-hmm. And I always ask people, you don't have to, but I always ask people to also, we're not an audience and speakers, we're a circle here. So I hope you might introduce yourselves to people around you who you don't know. Say what you do, what you care about. You might leave here with a new friend, a new job, a new love affair. Who knows what might happen. Because we need to break down this boundary too, with you looking at each other's backs and me looking at you.
So you started as a journalist, you worked as a freelance writer, but then you realized that you were not able to talk about the women issues you wanted to address in the mainstream media. So you decided to create your own media. And that's another thing I'm familiar with. Are we condemned to create our own spaces to reach a real freedom of speech as women and as feminists?
Not completely. I think it's a balance, you know. I think we need to create our own spaces in order to prove that we are news, you know, that people will want to read and want to see, in order to use new language to express things that are not expressed. But at a certain point, the balance begins to shift, and the big conventional media see that they're missing something. We become news. Now, 25 or 30 years ago, the term sexual harassment was invented in English. We did a cover story about it, gradually build. Okay, now, because we had our own media and because we had our own speak outs and meetings and so on, the Me Too movement is recognized as news by everyone. So it's a process.
So here we are talking about verb, about expressing our opinions, our experiences. And that is what you've done most of your life, creating safe spaces where people, especially people who suffer from systemic domination, can talk without being interrupted, without fear, with trust. That's the magic of the group. And you discovered this magic at a very young age when you went to India, in the district of Ramanathapuram, after you graduated. Can you tell us what happened there?
It was there that I realized or experienced talking circles, because that is the form in villages, of course. I mean, that is our original form of communication. But it still took me a really long time to translate that into my own world, because I thought, well, that's India, you know, this is village India, of course, they're sitting in a... It took me even longer, and only with the aid of the women's movement, to realize that it's universal.
And there is a passage that made me laugh and cry at the same time. We thought Gandhi had inspired women's circles, but actually it's the opposite.
Yes, with a friend named Devaki Jain, a brilliant woman who I just saw at the UN 2 days ago. Anyway, we decided that we were going to write about Gandhian methods of change, because they were they were nonviolent and well suited to the women's movement around the world. And so we were doing research and writing a pamphlet and carrying on. And we went to see a woman named Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay. Maybe some of you know, amazing, wonderful, amazing world figure, right? Because she had known Gandhi and worked with Gandhi. And she listened to us very patiently, sitting on her veranda, rocking. And when we were finished, she said, well, of course, my dear, we taught him everything he knew. And it's true that the methods of nonviolence and mass demonstrations and personal, you know, had been the ways that the women's movement was protesting child marriage and sati and all the things that they were protesting. And that's where Gandhi learned it. So there's such a lesson there, no? That even the things that were originally ours, we don't recognize as ours. They aren't attributed to us. They're universally human, but it was such a lesson to me, right?
You've always managed to link your fight for gender justice with the fight for racial justice. You've always worked with Black feminist activists such as Eleanor Holmes Norton, Dorothy Pittman Hughes, or your friend Alice Walker. And also during the 1977 Women's National Conference in Houston. It's a very strong moment. It's a very strong moment in the book. You're in charge of writing down the specific demands from the group of Black women who have come here to participate to the conference. This thing you've always done moves me because that's the only thing I could think of doing to live a feminist life. It's passing the microphone to more women, and especially women with less privilege than me. Is it how you see it?
Yes, it's an interesting question of privilege, isn't it? Because in the United States, white women have the privilege of being dependent. Is this a privilege? I don't think so. But it's if you look at the very unfortunate vote of our last election, and I'm here to apologize publicly for the fact that we have
Thank you.
foisted Donald Trump on the world. All I can say is that it has been very educational for us to see the worst of our country at the highest level. In English, we say we are woke now. I don't know what the equivalent is. But wait a minute, I lost track of our. I'm off.
So about being a white woman and.
Oh yes,
yeah.
No, you cannot perpetuate racism without sexism because you have to control reproduction in order to keep two races separate or to keep castes in India separate. So they are completely intertwined, and there is no way that we can fight against racism and sexism separately. It just doesn't work. But it's also true that, it's also true that in my country, Black women have been disproportionately influential and part of the women's movement, more than white women. But because of the imagery, we think that the women's movement is white, the civil rights movement is Black. And that keeps us from the solutions to the problem. In our last unfortunate election, 96% of Black women voted for Hillary Clinton, and 51% of white women voted for Donald Trump. Okay. So the women's movement has always been disproportionately Black women. I think that proves it. But we need also to understand why 51% of white women voted for Donald Trump. It mainly because, I mean, they're different, but mainly because they are dependent on the income and identity of a white man, and they're voting his self-interest. And the smartest thing I've ever heard about this was said by Harriet Tubman, a woman of the slavery era, Black woman, who freed herself from slavery, ran into the North, and conducted raids at night into the South to free other slaves. When she was complimented for freeing thousands of slaves in her lifetime, she always said, "I could have freed thousands more if only they knew they were slaves."
Thank you. There is a very important moment in the book when you talk about this turn into the feminist fight at the end of the 70s, where there are two political lines. One is a moderate line, which was embodied by women from the generation previous to yours, such as Betty Friedan, who thought things could be changed from the inside. And then there is a more radical movement, and you chose to embrace the radical one, the one that called for a revolution. Have you ever regretted this choice?
No, I've never regretted the choice, but I think the choice was made by our situations. Betty Friedan was talking to an audience of a life she had experienced, which was being married, living in the suburbs, unable to use the college education, thinking there must be more to life than this, right? So it was very important that she spoke to women with that experience. That was not my experience. So I think it's equally important to speak our experience in both cases.
It's so interesting how you always remind us how important the point of view from which you're talking is fundamental. So your book is dedicated to Dr. John Sharp. He's a doctor who helped you get an abortion in London in 1957, when abortion was still illegal in most countries. In England, it was authorized if the mother was in danger. You were 22, and he took great risks for you. He made you promise you would live the life you wanted to live, and you did. It's very moving. You celebrate his courage almost 50 years after. Abortion is still a very fragile right. In the US, it could be overturned any minute by the Supreme Court. But also here in France, I don't know if you're aware of this, but recently a gynecologist union has threatened a few days ago to go on abortion strike. So what can we do to protect this right and make sure our granddaughters can also live the life they want to live?
Well, telling the truth helps, because I don't know the statistics here, but in my country, even when it was illegal, 1 in 3 women had needed an abortion at some time in her life. I believe now it's 1 in 4. But I think we need to perhaps additionally express it as the basis of democracy. Each of us gets to make the decisions over our own bodies. Our bodies and our voices belong to us. That should be the basis of democracy. It isn't, because what they called democracy in both of our countries excluded us. So they thought they could declare democracy for half the human race. This is not democracy. I mean, if the law has a direct relationship to a fertilized egg in a woman's body, that means her body has been nationalized.
Wow.
And, I mean, they don't declare a direct relationship between the law and sperm. Otherwise, they would outlaw masturbation. So I think we need to stand up for each person's ability to control, to decide our physical self.
You've also always been very close to Native American communities. At the end of the 1977 Congress, a group of Lakota women give you a necklace, and this necklace becomes a lucky charm that follows you for all your life. These activists were the first ones to link the violence against women with the violence against nature. And it's a little pleasure I'm giving to myself by asking you this question, because I'm very intrigued by ecofeminism lately. And I was wondering if you thought feminism could be a key to solve the environmental crisis.
Yes, because it's the same fundamental unnatural hierarchy that tells us, or tries to tell us, that men can dominate women and that humans can dominate nature. Both things are built on the idea of hierarchy and domination. Actually, the origin of monotheism, patriarchal monotheism, which I don't know if there's any other kind, but anyway, was the withdrawal of godliness from nature and from women in order to make it okay to conquer nature in women. We are trying to portray, recreate a culture or a society that is about a circle, not a pyramid, not a hierarchy. We're trying to say that humans and nature and so we are linked. We are not ranked. I don't know enough to know what the pre-patriarchal societies were here. Basques, I think, no? Were
Parisians, and they worship Mother Earth, and you had a temple where Notre Dame is today.
The plot thins. Okay, right. I mean, it happened here first, but there was a reason why, 6 million witches who were just practicing healing and medicine and passing on the arts of birth control,
Yes.
were murdered over, 300 years, I think?
Yes.
Yeah. So the patriarchy and racism are political systems of dominance that can only be overturned if we reject the categories and say we basic things like we each have a right to our own bodies and we are connected to nature. We can't exist outside of nature.
I'm so glad you mentioned the witches, because it's through the witches that I came to ecofeminism, and I think this is all like really linked and it really makes sense. So being a beautiful woman can be a huge privilege, and it can help you being heard and being listened to in some circles. It can also prevent you from being believed and understood. In the 70s, people just couldn't understand why you were a feminist and single, where you could have just get married. Have you ever wished you looked totally different, as many other women did?
Well, I felt conflicted about it because I realized that the press was more likely to photograph me than another woman, which is not a pleasant thing to realize, that it's not what you're saying. So, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. But then there was one woman in an audience who really helped me, because she stood up, kind of old woman, and she stood up and she said, "Honey, it's really important that someone who could play the game and win say that the game isn't worth shit." So I said, "Thank you, you've given me a role to play."
Things are moving really strong lately since the Women's March and the Me Too movement and the launching of so many feminist platforms for the last 3 years. Do you have the feeling the revolution is near?
Well, a revolution is really not exactly what we're doing. It's more like an evolution, because revolution, revolution connotes violence, and though Marx and Engels were very nice guys, they made one big mistake, which was to say that the ends justify the means, when in fact the means we use affect the ends we get, right? So we have no intention of being violent except in self-defense, maybe, and it is more like an evolution. And I think that's a better imagery too, because what's happening is that views that were held by a small group of people 40 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever are now majority views in Europe, in my country. And that's a big victory. However, it also means that the people who are losing, who have a hierarchical view of the world, are in backlash. And that's true of a third of my country. It's who elected Trump. They feel they've been deprived of their place in a hierarchy.
My next question was about backlash, so you anticipated it. But when you saw the Me Too movement arrive, did you have the feeling we were going through another moment that's comparable to the one you lived, for example, in 1977 with this Women's Congress? Is it like a peak, or from your point of view, is it just like a straight-on evolution?
Well, it was a similar recognition, but on different ground. By much more public, much more reported on, majority. It took 30 years between the time the word sexual harassment was invented and the Me Too movement, but now it is a majority movement, and even non-feminist publications report on it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating when you say you're at the end of the Congress, the news coverage is about the visit of the Australian minister and not about the Congress, which, yeah. Gloria, I launched my own feminist media. I took part in many demonstrations and countless arguments online and offline. I cry every day when I read about the lives of women in other parts of the world, but also here in France, where 31 women have been killed since the beginning of the year by their husbands or ex-husbands. I am overwhelmed, I don't get enough sleep, I don't see my kids, I'm getting a divorce. Most of the time, I'm angry, I'm exhausted, and I've only done this for 3 years. So I would love to become one day the peaceful, healthy, smiling feminist, 80-year-old activist you are today. So do you have any health tips?
I'm angry. Hello?
Are you angry?
Of course.
You don't look angry. You look so peaceful and I don't know.
No, of course I'm angry. I mean, anger is like an energy cell. You can tap into it, and it makes. I mean, it's really important.
But it's tiring.
It's tiring. Yes, you need to take care of yourself, but it would be way worse to see injustice and to feel it done to you and not be angry. I mean, it's healthy. Anger is a great thing. It's the groups that are not supposed to be equal are told not to be angry. You know, I mean, in my country, angry black men or an angry woman is terrible. An angry CEO of some corporation is fine, you know.
Yeah.
So we need to reclaim our anger. Yeah, let me just ask, I mean, part of the reason women don't want to get angry, I mean, we just, we don't get angry until it just bursts forth, right? Is we cry when we get angry. Do any women here have this problem of crying? Okay, I rest my case, okay. And that keeps us from getting angry. And I met a woman, a high executive, who had this problem, and she solved it in the following way, because she worked mostly with men and so on. So she got angry, she cried, and she talked through it. She said, "You may think I am sad. No, this is the way I get angry. I am angry." I haven't been able to try this yet, but I recommend it. Also, I think in many cases, depression is anger turned inward. And it's part of the reason the rates of depression are way higher for women in general than for men.
So maybe if I could sum up your tip for my mental health is expressing, right? Crying, talking, yes. And yeah. Thank you. I read this sentence yesterday. It is by Georges Sand, feminist French writer from the 19th century. It says, "The mind searches, but it's the heart that finds." And I thought you could have written this sentence. It's very you, right?
Because somehow the heart symbolizes our wholeness in a way that the brain does not. Perhaps because our brain is dependent on the heart.
I think this sentence made me think of you after reading this book, because if I had the feeling you had gotten rid of your anger, is that there is so much, I don't know, there is a real calm and a real point in your journey. We can feel that it's not something that you have intellectualized. It's something that comes from the bottom of your guts, from the very beginning. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, our instinct is like a computer compared to adding things up with a pencil and paper, you know. It's so important to trust that. You know, the best parable I can think of is that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and looks like a duck and you think it's a pig, it's a pig.
In your book, you write that over the last 20 years, you haven't spent more than a week at your house, at home, in a row. I know you read Virginia Woolf. I love her too. So there is a question I ask to every woman I interview. Do you have access to your room of your own?
No, well, now I do. I mean, I fixed up my apartment. I unpacked the cardboard boxes. I mean, even birds have nests. So now I do have a nest. I do have a home. And I, unlike Virginia Woolf, I always had a room of my own. I just had boxes in it.
Thank you so much, Gloria Steinem. Thank you to Gloria Steinem for being my guest in La Poudre. Thank you to the Mona Bismarck Center and to Harper Collins France for organizing this recording. La Poudre is a podcast by Nouvelles Écoutes, produced by Aurore Meyer-Mailleux, prepared by Gaia Marty and Laura Cuissard, and mixed by Charles de Cilia.